Hey guys. Well, let's begin. Tonight we time travel to somewhere very specific. Somewhere you're absolutely not prepared for. Picture this. You blink, and the soft hum of modern life, traffic in the distance, your phone buzzing beside you, air conditioning humming, disappears. In its place, a cold splash of reality. You're lying face down in the mud, the ground damp and oddly spongy beneath you. It's morning, or at least what passes for morning in this part of medieval England. Grey, cloudy, and aggressively moist. The air smells like burning peat, manure, and something vaguely fishy. Welcome to your new life. To be honest, you probably won't survive this. So, before the lights go out, click like and subscribe, but only if you're brave enough to return tomorrow night. And hey, drop your location and the local time in the comments. It's kind of comforting to know who's listening out there in the dark. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan, because silence makes this story worse. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You come to groggily, disoriented, and immediately cold. There's no pavement beneath you, just slick, sticky muck that's already soaked through your socks, except you're not wearing socks. No shoes either. Your modern outfit is gone, replaced with a coarse, itchy tunic made from what might be wool, but feels more like someone spun a sweater out of steel wool and disappointment. Your fingers dig into the mud as you sit up. It squelches. Someone nearby yells something incomprehensible. It sounds English, but not the English you know. It's Middle English, and let's just say Duolingo hasn't gotten around to that lesson plan. You scan your surroundings, tiny wooden huts, thatched roofs, livestock wandering loose, and people staring at you like you're either royalty or a lunatic. Everything looks like a low-budget Renaissance fair, until you realize no one is playing dress-up, and the mud smells real. You're standing in the middle of a medieval village, possibly in Yorkshire or Kent or some other shire that's lost to time, and still incredibly damp. A man approaches, covered in layers of filth and frowning like it's his default face. He says something. You just blink. He repeats it, louder. You pick up something that sounds like steward and guest. Before you can answer, he motions for you to follow and starts walking toward the largest house in the village. Still modest, but at least it has walls that don't visibly breathe. As you walk, or more accurately, squelch toward the house, the scale of your situation sinks in. This isn't a dream. This is the 14th century. You are very much not wearing deodorant, and unless you figure out how to blend in quickly. Inside the house, you're introduced to your host, a stout woman with arms like tree trunks and an expression that dares you to complain about the smell. She says something that sounds like a blessing, or maybe a threat, then hands you a bowl of something lumpy and warm. It tastes vaguely of onion and regret. The floor is straw, the walls are wattle and daub, which means twigs and mud. There's a pig inside. No one seems to notice. The fire smokes constantly, and there's no chimney. Just a hole in the roof. Everyone's eyes are watery. It's not a vibe. It's carbon monoxide. Here's your first mainstream historical fact. Most peasants in medieval England lived in one-room houses, shared with their livestock. Pigs were basically roommates. Cute, huh? And here's something even quirkier. Many villagers placed animal bones under their thresholds for luck. The door you just walked through? Yeah, you may have stepped over a goose skull. Whoops. Historians still argue whether village life was communal bliss or relentless misery. Depends on your tolerance for eels and open sores. You try to say something, anything, but your modern vocabulary is useless here. When you blurt out, Google Maps, the youngest child begins to cry. You offer a nervous smile. The stout woman pats your head and mutters something about fevered minds. As the day drags on, you realize there's no privacy. People relieve themselves in the corner of the yard. One man has a bladder stone and announces it like a weather report. Every cough feels ominous, and you're 98% sure that guy in the corner has plague. If you try to wash your hands, there's no soap. Just a greasy basin filled with something that might have once been water. When you sneeze, everyone flinches. You're asked if you've made a deal with a spirit in the woods. You laugh nervously, which doesn't help. By sunset, you've been tasked with collecting firewood and hauling water from a well that's 3 fields away. It takes hours, your arms are jelly, and you nearly slip into the well trying to lift the bucket. The villagers laugh. You do not. Oh, and the mud? It never dries. Your legs are streaked with it, your tunic is stained, and you've started to name the insects crawling on you. Deneth is on your shoulder. He seems chill. By the time you collapse onto the straw bedding, still warm from the pig, you're beyond exhausted. Everything hurts. You miss your phone, your filtered water, and your warm socks. But most of all, you miss not sharing your bed with 3 chickens and a suspiciously aggressive rat. And just when you think it can't get worse, someone whispers, "Tomorrow's wash day." You're not sure what that means, but judging by the tone, it's probably bad. You wake up to a rooster screaming directly into your soul. It's not the gentle pastoral crowing you've seen in movies. This bird is angry, nasal, and persistent. He's perched somewhere near your head because, surprise, there are no doors. Just hanging sacks of fabric pretending to be curtains. Privacy, adorable concept, gone now. You sit up, your back already sore from sleeping on what was basically a pile of sticks pretending to be a mattress. And worse, your skin itches. Not the casual, "I forgot to moisturize" itch. No, this is the slow, crawling sensation of wool against skin, medieval wool. Scratchy, coarsely woven, and, judging by the smell, previously owned. Welcome to medieval fashion, where comfort comes dead last. Someone hands you another tunic, just as stiff and beige as the one you had yesterday. This one has a rope belt and a questionable stain. You hold it up and look around. Nope, no changing room. You shuffle behind the firewood stack, do a quick change with all the grace of a sleep-deprived flamingo, and try not to inhale the deeply earthy scent coming off the fabric. Here's your fun mainstream historical fact of the day. In medieval England, most people wore layers of undyed wool or linen, with little variation unless you were rich or a knight. And no, they didn't have closets full of outfits. A typical peasant had maybe 1 spare tunic, if they were lucky. And here's a quirky tidbit. Underwear as we know it was basically non-existent for most people. Men sometimes wore linen drays, think loose, wrinkled shorts with a drawstring. Women had it worse. 1 layer of itchy undersmock and a whole lot of hope. Historians still argue whether medieval clothes were intentionally unisex for efficiency, or if fashion simply hadn't bothered to evolve yet. Either way, it's not flattering. You look like a burlap sack lost a bet. Your host family gestures toward your shoes. Well, shoes is generous. They're more like floppy leather pancakes. You slip your feet into them and immediately feel every rock beneath you like an ancient pressure point massage from hell. Outside, the village is waking up. People wander around in similar potato-colored outfits, chatting, fetching water and tending to animals that seem to have no boundaries. A goose charges you. You yelp and leap back, only to land in a puddle so deep you're sure it has its own ecosystem. Someone laughs. It's the local smith, a woman with biceps that could crush walnuts, and an expression that says she already doesn't trust you. She points at your tunic and mimes scratching. You nod, and she gestures for you to follow her. You're led to a bench near the smithy, where you're given a small bundle. Inside, a tiny comb. Wooden. Lice comb, actually. Very popular in these parts. And now you meet your greatest enemy, parasites. Everyone has fleas. Everyone. It's not a scandal, it's a fact of life. You casually glance around and, yep, people are scratching, picking, and occasionally burning pieces of their clothes. You thought the itching was from the wool? Think again. Congratulations, you're now a living buffet. The smith offers you a small pot of something that smells like herbs, vinegar, and possibly sadness. You rub it into your scalp. It doesn't help much, but at least it distracts you from the goose watching you from a distance, like it's plotting your downfall. You learn from a chatty teenager, named Wolf, because medieval names go hard, that washing clothes is a rare and complicated process, involving lye soap, cold rivers, and sore hands. Most folks just beat their tunics on rocks, let them freeze dry, and call it a day. So yes, that smell isn't going anywhere. Back in the house, your host family is preparing for a local festival, not the fun kind with rides and snacks. This one celebrates the harvest by drinking a lot of ale and dancing in circles. Your invitation? Fetching flowers and not tripping over goats. The women tie rough garlands of nettles and daisies into their hair. You try to help, but end up with 3 bee stings and a new fear of petals. A toddler laughs at you. The toddler is also armed with a stick. You don't ask questions. The celebration begins around midday. Someone starts playing a pipe, like an actual carved wooden pipe, and everyone begins to hum along. There's clapping, stamping, and lots of suspiciously rhythmic hopping. A man in a fox mask does a backflip and pulls a hamstring. Everyone cheers. You try to dance but quickly realize you're off beat and off balance. A girl pulls you into a circle and shouts a chant that may or may not be insulting. You just smile and go along. Her hands are rough, her laugh is bright, and her breath is pure onion. You sway together until the fire gets brighter, and your itchy tunic is soaked in sweat and shame. Here's the weird bit. Despite the fleas, the dirt, the hunger, you feel a strange sense of community. No one here is clean or stylish, but they're connected. They have to be. There's no DoorDash in medieval England. If you want bread, someone needs to mill flour, someone needs to bake it, and someone, probably you, needs to carry it home without eating it all first. The evening winds down. Someone brings out a stringy stew and a slab of bread so hard it could be used as a weapon. You chew, slowly, carefully. Someone else passes a cup of ale. You sip, then cough. It's warm, cloudy, and tastes like wet hay. But it's better than the water, which probably contains things modern medicine doesn't even have names for yet. As the stars come out, you're offered a place by the fire. Not inside the house, no. You're with the other travelers and laborers, lying on a worn wool blanket under the open sky. It's cold, it's loud, and someone's snoring sounds like a dying accordion. But for a moment, lying there staring at the stars while a goat licks your elbow, you feel oddly peaceful. And then the goose finds you again. You wake up gagging on smoke. Not a cozy campfire kind of smoke either. This is the kind that clings to your throat and makes your eyes water before you even open them. Your face is damp with dew, your back is one continuous knot, and someone nearby is already yelling about chickens. Again. Your stomach growls in a way that feels personal. You're starving. Like I'd eat my own shoe, if it wasn't already made of leather and despair level starving. The villagers are already bustling around. A woman offers you a cup of something warm. You brace yourself. It's ale, for breakfast. And not the good kind you find at a craft brewery with a weird name and a $14.00 pretzel on the side. This ale is flat, lukewarm, and vaguely sour, like someone soaked bread in rainwater and dared it to ferment. But it's drinkable. Technically. You ask about water and someone laughs so hard they almost drop a turnip. Drink the river and you'll see the devil's teeth, they say. Charming. Apparently ale is safer than water here, because boiling it during the brewing process kills off bacteria. So yes, even toddlers drink it. Babies too. Welcome to medieval wellness. Today's breakfast? Thick slices of coarse rye bread, a sliver of cheese so hard you could tile a roof with it, and, of course, more ale. A hearty peasant breakfast. You gnaw through the bread like it's punishment. There's no butter, no jam, no hope, just carbs and survival. Here's your mainstream historical fact. In medieval England, breakfast wasn't considered an essential meal. In fact, it was often reserved for labourers or the sick. Most people ate just 2 meals a day, midday and evening. So if you're hungry now, too bad. That cheese rind better last. And now for something odd. Some villagers believed that fasting in the morning helped keep demons at bay. Others simply couldn't afford to eat more often. Either way, there's a cultural layer of guilt baked into the bread you're gnawing. Historians still argue whether the prevalence of ale at all meals was a practical health strategy, or just the medieval version of drinks solve everything. Hard to say. But right now, You're buzzed before sunrise and craving a granola bar. After breakfast, the villagers split off into their daily routines. You try to help. Someone hands you a pitchfork. You jab at hay until a goat attacks it. Then you're given a bucket and sent to milk a cow that looks like she knows you don't belong. She kicks the bucket halfway through, literally. You salvage about 2 mouthfuls and leave with bruised pride. Then it's grain time. You're sent to help with the milling. You follow a woman named Edith, who could deadlift your entire modern gym. She leads you to the mill, powered by a creaky wooden water wheel that looks like it's held together by hope and moss. Your job? Turning a massive stone wheel by hand. For hours. You grind the wheat into coarse flour, while Edith sings a song about a knight who fell in love with a goose. No one questions it. Your arms ache, your back aches, your legs are jelly. At one point, you whisper, "I'd kill for a latte," and someone nearby crosses themselves and mutters about witches. You step outside to get a breath of fresh air. The village smells like smoke, animals, and unwashed humanity. But your nose is starting to adjust. You notice a small group of children huddled around something. You wander closer. They're playing a game with pebbles and dried peas, gambling like tiny Las Vegas grifters. One of them hands you a rock and says something that might be a challenge. You lose 4 rocks and some dignity. Back at the house, preparations are being made for dinner, which is what we'd call lunch. It's the biggest meal of the day. A pot is bubbling over the fire, stew again, but this time it smells like cabbage and bones. You're handed a bowl and sit outside with the others. The stew is fine, mostly turnips, maybe a hint of meat. You don't ask questions, you just eat. During the meal, an old man tells a story about the time lightning struck a cart full of apples and turned it into wine. You laugh, no one else does. Either you missed the joke, or they're still trying to figure out what your laugh means. Cultural gaps are tricky like that. Midway through the meal, you're invited to say a blessing. You panic. You mumble something about gratitude and the bounty of this turnip. People nod politely. One woman gives you a side eye like you just suggested worshipping a new god. You decide to remain very, very quiet from now on. Here's something you didn't expect. Every single bite feels earned, not just because you're hungry, but because you helped mill the flour and milk the cow and chop the wood for the fire. It's back-breaking, it's exhausting, but it's also kind of grounding. Not enjoyable, just grounding. Like you being reminded how soft your modern life really is. You look around at the villagers, laughing, burping, picking their teeth with twigs, and you start to feel like a visiting alien. They live hard, they die young, and they somehow make time to gossip about the blacksmith's brother eloping with a baker from 3 towns over. Human nature? Totally unchanged. As the sun climbs higher, the warmth doesn't bring comfort. It just makes everything smell stronger. You're sweating in places you didn't know could sweat. Your tunic now has a permanent damp stripe down the back, and there's something alive in your sleeve. You flick it. It flicks back. You agree to coexist. Someone starts beating a drum, time for chores again. This time you're helping with laundry, which means dragging tunics and cloaks to the river, pounding them with wooden paddles, and watching the current sweep away soap and dreams. Here's your last little surprise. Medieval soap was often made from animal fat and ashes. Lye soap, great for clothes, terrible for skin. You'll smell like a smoked ham for the rest of the day. By the time the sun starts to dip, your arms are lead, your stomach is hollow, and your feet look like they've aged 50 years. You curl up in your usual spot by the fire and whisper to no one in particular, "I miss Wi-Fi." The goat bleaks in agreement. It starts with a grumble. Not your stomach this time. That's more of a permanent background hum now, but something deeper, more urgent. A biological reminder that you, dear time traveler, have not used an actual bathroom in, well, since arriving. So you ask. That idea. Because in medieval England there are no bathrooms, not even an outhouse. Just a system. A system so primitive it makes campground porta potties look like luxury spas. Your host, clearly confused by your question, points behind the pigsty with a tired gesture and a single word, midden. You follow the direction. It's not a joke, it's literally a pit, a shallow trench, just far enough from the house to avoid splash zone. There's a rickety board laid across the top like a balance beam for your dignity. You hesitate. A chicken struts by, unimpressed. You mutter something about modern plumbing and take your chances. And let's just say, leaves are not toilet paper. They never were, they never will be. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Most medieval villages didn't have structured sanitation. Waste was dumped in pits, rivers, or simply in the street. Some larger cities developed early sewer channels, but in rural areas, you had the backfield special. Quirky detail of the day. In some places, folks actually used moss, straw, or even sheep's wool as a post-bathroom solution. Hygienic? Not even close. But soft? Surprisingly, yes. Historians still argue whether medieval communities actively managed waste or just accepted that filth was part of life. Either way, you now understand why everyone smells faintly of desperation and damp hay. You try to clean up with water from a nearby bucket. It's murky, probably from yesterday's washing, and may contain at least one fish. You dip your hands and call it good enough. No one else seems to notice, or care. Later that morning, the village is bustling. It's market day, which sounds exciting, until you realize it just means everyone's gathering near the road to trade things they already own for things they slightly want more. You follow a small crowd to the edge of the village, where stalls are little more than crates and stretched fabric. No bright signs, no plastic price tags, just shouting, smells, and chickens. Always chickens. One man is selling onions, another has a crate of fine linens that are clearly just old rags with hope. A woman stands behind a table of dried herbs and powders, advertising loudly that her root of St. Agnes cures both boils and heartbreak. You eye the herbs, she eyes you back. You slowly step away. A boy holds up a rabbit with a bit of ribbon around its neck. Best mouser in the Shire, he claims. You're almost impressed. Your host presses a few grimy coins into your hand. Well, not coins exactly. More like flattened blobs of metal with weird dents. Good luck figuring out their value. Medieval currency is a mess. Every lord, king, or baron has their own mint, and no one trusts your paper money. One glimpse of your wallet, and a man whispers, "Devil's purse," and backs away like you're regular. So here's your historical nugget. English coinage in this period included silver pennies, groats, and farthings, but most peasants dealt in barter, not coins. Coinage was often clipped, counterfeited, or entirely ignored. And here's the weird bit. Some villagers used tally sticks, literally sticks with notches, as receipts for debts and taxes. Try tapping that at a self-checkout. Historians still argue whether barter systems were born out of necessity or a deeper mistrust of centralized currency. Either way, you're not buying much. You attempt to trade for an apple, the merchant sniffs at your coin and then offers you a worm-eaten one. You accept with grace. It's mushy. You eat it anyway. On the way back to the village center, you pass a large pile of hay stacked near a barn. A boy jumps off it, arms outstretched, yelling something about dragons. His landing breaks nothing but your heart, because, honestly, it looks kind of fun. You sit down beside the stack, exhausted. Someone offers you a drink. You sip. It's ale again. Your taste buds sigh in surrender. That evening, something unusual happens. You're invited to participate in a game. It's like tag, but with rules no one explains, and everyone cheats. You chase, you're chased, and you get tackled by a grandmother who clearly moonlights as a linebacker. Everyone laughs, even you. It's the first time you've laughed without coughing. Later, as the sun dips behind the forest, the villagers begin preparing for nightfall. It's a ritual. Fires are banked, doors are barred, animals are herded inside, candles are lit sparingly. Wax is expensive. You help light a tallow candle, which smells like beef stew left in a boot, but it glows. Dimly. You try to explain electricity to a small boy. He stares at you and asks if it's like lightning in a bottle. You nod. He looks impressed. You feel a bit like a wizard. Dinner is another stew. This one has beans. Someone sings. You humour along, pretending to know the words. A girl braids flowers into your hair, possibly as a prank. You leave them in. Why not? As the fire dies down and the stars return, you realize how dark true night is. There's no glow from streetlights, no headlights, just the occasional spark from a fire and the sound of someone, somewhere, practicing the lute badly. You crawl back into your straw-filled sleeping corner and whisper to yourself, I used to complain about my apartment. The goat snores beside you. You find comfort in its breathy wheezing. You're starting to understand that comfort, in this time, is never physical. It's relational. It's survival with others. You hold that thought. Then, someone outside shouts about wolves. You don't sleep well. You don't remember falling asleep, but you definitely remember waking up. Something's biting your foot. You jolt up with a gasp, kick wildly, and discover the culprit, a flea circus beneath your blanket, starring your left ankle. You yank off your scratchy wool covering and shake it furiously. 4 fleas bounce out. At least 4. You stop counting. It's too early for maths. And unfortunately, it's not just the fleas. You're itchy all over. Arms, back. Even your scalp feels like a live wire. You scratch discreetly, then not so discreetly. A woman across the fire scratches in solidarity. You lock eyes in mutual misery. She nods. It's like a secret handshake, if the handshake involved insects and shame. Welcome to your new reality. Everyone has fleas. Everyone. Nobles might hide them under finer layers of fabric, but even kings had their share of uninvited guests. You're not special. You're just new. Here's your daily historical nugget. In medieval England, lice, fleas and bedbugs were constant companions. Bathing was rare and often discouraged. Cleanliness was just low priority. It was borderline suspicious. If you were too clean, people assumed you were vain. Or French. Your quirky tidbit for today. Flea traps were a thing. Some folks wore ribbons soaked in animal fat or sweet oils under their clothes to lure the bugs away from their skin. Kind of like medieval bug zappers, except, grosser. Historians still argue whether people of the time accepted parasites as inevitable, or if they tried harder than we realize to avoid them. The evidence is mixed, but your personal experience leans heavily toward inevitable. You try to wash again. No soap this time, just cold water and a vague hope that scrubbing furiously will scare the fleas away. It doesn't. One jumps onto your finger and stares at you like it owns your soul. Breakfast is more bread, more ale, always ale. You ask for tea. A boy offers you a handful of weeds and says, "Try steeping those." You politely decline. After breakfast, you're put on laundry duty again. This time you're scrubbing woolen undertunics that look like they've been through war. You learn very quickly that medieval people didn't wear a new set of clothes each day. They wore the same garments for days, sometimes weeks, until they were too stiff to bend. Washing clothes involves soaking them in lye soap and hot water, if you're lucky. But most peasants couldn't afford that luxury, so they beat the clothes with wooden paddles in cold rivers, then wrung them out and prayed. It's your job today. Paddle, wring, repeat. Halfway through the 3rd tunic, you find something moving. You drop the cloth, no one else even blinks. Apparently bugs in laundry are normal. Great. You need a distraction. So you start talking to the woman next to you. Edith again, the arm wrestling champion of the local well. She tells you about her 7 siblings, 4 goats, and 1 bad marriage to a man who smelled like wet barley and never chopped wood straight. You nod, listening as the rhythm of her voice blends with the sound of water splashing and clothes slapping rocks. It's oddly soothing, even if your hands are now raw from scrubbing and you can't feel your fingertips. Later, you're invited to help with childcare. You try your best, really. But the children are tiny tornadoes. One of them bites your hand, another sticks a beetle in your ear. You pretend it's fine, You're too tired to fight a 3-year-old. You learn quickly that children here grow up fast. They're working by age 6, married by 14, and tired by 20. They run barefoot through mud, climb trees like squirrels, and hurl insults in Middle English so sharp they might actually leave a mark. You understand nothing they say, but the sarcasm? Oh, that transcends centuries. Your next task is gathering herbs with an older woman named Maud. She's hunched, missing most of her teeth, and has eyes like she's seen at least 3 plagues and enjoyed none of them. She points to plants and names them: yarrow, tansy, mugwort. You repeat the names, trying to impress her. She ignores you and hands you a sharp little knife. You follow her into the woods. Here's something strange. In this deeply unwashed world, Maud smells good. Earthy, herbal, almost medicinal. You realize her clothes are scented with dried rosemary and lavender. Not for fashion, for flea control. She hands you a small pouch of dried lavender wrapped in linen. You tuck it under your tunic. It's the first time in days you feel slightly less like a human buffet. Here's your quirky fact. Medieval people often filled their clothes and pillows with herbs to repel insects. Lavender, mint, and wormwood were popular anti-pest measures. Your medieval cologne is now lavender and desperation. Maud teaches you which plants help with stomach aches, which ones make you sleep, and which ones to avoid unless you want visions of the holy or the horrible. You make mental notes. Also, mental pacts not to try anything labelled the horrible. Historians still argue whether women like Maud were respected healers or quietly feared witches. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. Either way, you're grateful she hasn't tried to hex you yet. As evening falls, you return to the village with your pouch of herbs and your 1,000-yard stare. Your tunic is still itchy, but now it smells like a forest. A mildly haunted forest, but better than your previous scent of damp despair. Dinner is, guess what? Stew. This time with lentils. You try not to look directly at whatever's floating in it. You sit by the fire, scratching slowly under your tunic while pretending to listen to a story about a man who married a swan. You stop yourself from asking questions. There are no answers here. The stars come out again, brighter than ever. You lie back, your head on a sack of grain, and stare upward. Someone strums a stringed instrument nearby. It's badly tuned. It doesn't matter. Reginald the flea is still somewhere on your person. You've made peace with that, probably. You think about showers, about soft towels, about detergent. And then you think about Maud, about the kids who insulted you in medieval toddler speak, and about the lavender in your sleeve. You smile, just a little. Tomorrow, you promise yourself, you'll find a real way to scratch your back. Your eyes open to smoke. Again. But this time it's oddly comforting. Like your brain has finally accepted that in this world, every breath is just a little bit flammable. Someone's stoking the fire with what looks like half a cartwheel, and the goat, your emotionally unavailable bedmate, is chewing on your hair. Good morning, medieval England. You sit up slowly, itchy and sore, and realize someone has placed a bundle of straw under your head during the night. Whether it was a kind gesture or an attempt to keep you from drooling on the grain sack, you'll never know. But it's the softest pillow you've had since arriving, and that's a little heartbreaking. Breakfast is, you guessed it, bread and ale. You've stopped asking for anything else. You've also stopped caring what day it is. Every day here smells like smoke, tastes like damp bread, and ends with someone throwing a chicken at someone else. After your now routine breakfast scratch session, you, Reginald, and the gang, you're told it's Sunday, church day, and you absolutely have to go. No excuses. You're handed your best tunic. It looks exactly like your other tunics, but someone's attempted to brush the straw off it, so that's something. You're not sure how to dress up for church when you've been sleeping in flea-ridden wool for a week, but you smooth your hair and hope no one notices the lavender pouch you're still clinging to like a medieval security blanket. Everyone gathers outside the long, narrow building that serves as the village chapel. It's made of timber, lopsided in the middle, and smells like wet limestone. Inside there are no pews, just rough wooden benches that threaten to give you splinters in places too intimate to mention. A man steps forward. He's the priest you assume based on his long robes and the immediate hush that falls over the room. He begins the service in Latin, loud, fast, and unwavering. You catch maybe 2 words. You nod solemnly anyway. Here's your historical fact for the day. Medieval church services were held entirely in Latin, a language the average peasant did not understand. They attended anyway, partly out of fear, partly out of habit, and partly because if you didn't, people noticed. You glance around. Everyone's doing their best to look holy. The kids fidget. The older women mutter prayers. One man seems to be asleep with his eyes open. And you're somewhere between dazed and deeply confused. At one point, the priest lifts a silver goblet. The villagers bow their heads. You do the same. A beat late. Someone coughs behind you. You tense automatically. Your medieval PTSD is kicking in again. Then comes the part where he talks directly to the villagers. This bit is in Middle English, a blend of sounds that feels like English and gibberish had a baby during a lightning storm. You catch a few phrases: the soul, the devil, and something about turnips. You nod again. The priest seems satisfied. Now comes the real fun: confession. You're ushered, along with everyone else, to kneel before a small wooden box. It's more ceremonial than private. You're expected to speak aloud, with humility, about your sins from the week. You panic. What do you confess? Watching Netflix in the 21st century? Eating processed sugar? Thinking unholy thoughts about deodorant? You mumble something about lying. Everyone else seems to be doing the same. The priest nods, raises his hand and blesses you. A child behind you whispers, "He didn't even say it right." You pretend not to hear. Here's your quirky tidbit. In some villages, confessions included not just sins, but gossip. People would casually confess about others, effectively tattling during religious ceremony. That's right. Medieval church was part sermon, part rumour mill. Historians still argue whether this communal confession strengthened community bonds or just fueled distrust. You're voting for distrust. Everyone here side-eyes each other like a live-action soap opera. After the service, you're ushered back outside, blinking in the grey light like you've just emerged from a crypt. The villagers begin chatting and shaking hands. The kids resume chasing each other with sticks, and someone hands you a crust of bread that's supposed to be blessed. It tastes exactly like the unblessed bread. Then comes the fun part: church taxes. Your host explains this delicately. The tithe. 1/10 of everything you earn, grow, or own goes to the church. You try to imagine tithing on your 2025 paycheck. The thought is so funny you almost laugh out loud. Here, though, it means turning over some of the barley you helped thresh yesterday. You hand it over. The priest doesn't thank you. He just nods, like you've fulfilled a minor part of an ancient, unspoken contract. Later, you sneak away to sit near the chapel's back wall. You need a moment. You lean your head against the cool stone and close your eyes. A girl sits beside you. She's maybe 13. Her face is smudged with ash and freckles. She's humming. You recognize the tune. It's the same lullaby someone sang to a baby the night before. You hum along softly. She smiles. She asks if you're from the northern farms. You nod. It's easier than explaining the timeline collapse that landed you here. She asks if you're betrothed. You choke slightly on your ale. Here's the thing. In this era, betrothals often happened at absurdly young ages, sometimes as early as 7, with marriages solidified by 12 or 13. You're suddenly very aware of your single status, your lack of goat dowry. Quirky historical tidbit? Medieval people did kiss to seal a betrothal. Historians still argue whether these early arrangements were more about property or survival. Either way, you're just hoping no one offers you to a local blacksmith by sundown. The girl asks if you want to see the relic. You're intrigued. She takes you around the side of the chapel and points to a small, bone-like fragment in a glass box. "St. Cuthbert's finger," she whispers. He makes chickens lay twice as many eggs if you pray right. You stare at the relic. It might be a chicken bone, or a finger, hard to say. Finger, even though you're deeply unsettled. By nightfall the village has quieted again. The fire crackles, the chickens roost. You lie on your straw mat, arms folded behind your head, thinking about confessions, relics, and just how much of this society runs on fear, folklore, and fungus. Reginald jumps off your shoulder. You wish him a good night. Your breath fogs in the cool air. You stare into the dark and wonder, not for the first time, how long you'll survive here. Your dreams are strange and vivid. In one, you're being chased through a forest by a choir of chanting monks. In another, you're trying to order a latte from a man holding a turnip and a cross. You wake up disoriented and sweaty, half expecting to find yourself back in your apartment. But no, you're still on the floor, still wrapped in a tunic that smells faintly of old soup and goat. Someone is singing outside. Not beautifully, not badly either, just loudly. You poke your head out and see a group of villagers heading toward the chapel again. It's not Sunday. This, apparently, is a saint's feast day, yet another excuse to gather, chant, and possibly eat something more exciting than stew. You follow, because saying no isn't really an option in a place where saying the wrong thing can still get you accused of summoning frogs. Inside, the chapel has been decorated with garlands of herbs and branches. It smells much better than usual. Sweet, earthy, with just a touch of mildew. The priest is wearing an extra robe today. It's red, which means this saint may have died dramatically. Today's feast is for St. Odulf, patron of farmers and, oddly, those suffering from toothaches. That last bit seems to hit home, because you glance around and notice that, well, no one here has great teeth. Some are missing half a row. Others have colour palettes ranging from bone to charcoal. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Dental care in medieval England was virtually non-existent. People used cloths, twigs, or even crushed shells to clean their teeth when they remembered. Tooth decay was rampant, and toothaches were considered a type of divine punishment. Or, if you were lucky, a test of faith. Quirky tidbit? Some folks believed holding a dead mouse against your cheek could cure a toothache. The logic? Vague at best. The result? Probably just an infection. Historians still argue whether medieval diets, while heavy on grains and low on sugar, helped preserve teeth, or if it was just the early grave that spared people from needing dentures. After the service, a man offers you a piece of dried apple. You chew carefully, convinced your own molars are on the verge of mutiny. One wrong bite, and you'll be begging St. Odulf for mercy. You wander outside, trying not to look directly at anyone's gums. The feast is beginning, which sounds grand, but really just means someone boiled a few extra root vegetables, and there's a slightly stronger ale being passed around. Still, there's music. Someone's playing a Rebecca sort of medieval violin. It sounds like a cat trying to sing opera. People dance anyway. Someone hands you a stick and motions for you to join a rhythmic clapping game that involves stomping, shouting, and apparently dodging elbows. You're not bad at it. By the third round, you've actually got the rhythm. An older woman winks at you and says you have festival feet. You're not sure what that means, but it sounds like a compliment. After dancing, you sit with a group of elders. One of them begins a story about St. Odulf fighting off a demon disguised as a boar. The story changes halfway through and becomes about Odulf turning the boar into bacon. Everyone nods solemnly. You ask if it's true. The man leans in. Truth is like ale, he says, best when it's warm, thick, and makes you forget the rest. You nod, as if you understand. You try to make small talk with another villager, a young man named Godric. He asks where you're from. You panic and say, the Western Woods. He narrows his eyes, then shrugs. Must be cursed over there. You speak strange. You say something about fog and silence. He seems satisfied. Then he shows you something hidden under his cloak, a small carved saint's icon. It's been passed down for generations, he says. cures sickness and keeps the dead in the ground. You ask if it works. He shrugs. Grandmother still lives. The neighbor's cow came back. Could be worse. Here's your fringe tidbit for the day. Relics were a major part of medieval spirituality. People believed physical objects, bones, cloths, even dust, connected to saints could heal the sick or protect crops. Whether they worked or not was less important than believing they could. Historians still argue whether the spread of relics was a spiritual movement or a very profitable business model. Some churches got rich off toe bones that may or may not have belonged to humans at all. You sit by the fire again as the sun sinks low. Someone is baking something. You smell honey, actual honey. Your mouth waters so hard it almost offends the others. A woman offers you a small oat cake with a smear of honey and crushed walnuts. You nearly cry. You savor each bite like it's your last meal. It very well might be. The music dies down. The villagers return to their routines. Chickens are herded. Fires are covered. A boy with no shoes chases a pig until it disappears into a bush. You wonder, briefly, if you imagined him. It's been a long day. Back at the house, your host is nursing a toothache. You offer her your lavender pouch. She chuckles and puts it under her pillow. You say a little fake prayer to St. Odulf, just in case. It's not like you've got dental insurance. As you settle into your straw bed, the old woman in the corner mutters a rhyme about saints, wolves, and keeping your feet warm to avoid evil dreams. You take the advice to heart. You tuck your feet deep under your tunic and pray that Reginald and his flea band take the night off. The chapel bell tolls once in the distance. You stare into the dark, thinking of bones and glass boxes, honey cakes, and mouse-based dental care. And you can't help but wonder, is this really history or some kind of fever dream? Either way, your back still hurts. The day starts with shouting. You bolt upright, smacking your head on the low beam above you. It's barely dawn, but something's wrong. People are yelling in the lane, doors are slamming, and a donkey is braying like it's auditioning for a horror film. You stumble outside, heart pounding, still wrapped in your itchy tunic. A cluster of villagers has gathered near the green, whispering and pointing at the manor house, the largest building in the area, perched on a slight hill like a muddy castle. A young boy runs by and shouts something about nobles. And just like that, the mood shifts. You quickly learn that today is the worst kind of day in medieval England. The local lord is visiting. Till now, your world has been made of turnips, straw, and general discomfort. But today you find out where you actually stand in the great social ladder. Spoiler alert, it's under the pig. Here's your historical truth bomb. Most people in medieval England were peasants, tenant farmers or labourers, tied to the land they worked. Nobles were the landowners, the ruling class, the enforcers, the tax collectors. And, let's be honest, the ones with the least dirt under their nails. Quirky tidbit. The word villain comes from villain, a type of unfree peasant. Yep. Even the language remembers how unliked they were. Historians still argue whether the feudal system provided protection and stability, or was just a glorified pyramid scheme with chainmail. You're handed a broom and told to sweep the area near the Lord's path. Not because you're special, but because someone decided you're expendable. You sweep. Poorly. The dirt swirls right back. You try again. The wind mocks you. Then come the trumpets, or, well, something trumpet adjacent. A group of dusty men on horseback appear at the edge of the village, followed by 2 carts, several servants, and one truly unfortunate man carrying a chamber pot like it's a crown jewel. At the center of it all, the noble. He's young, maybe 30. His clothes are absurd. Silks, velvets, layers upon layers, even though it's July and he's clearly sweating like a roasted goose. But everyone bows, so you do too. Your knees crack. It's not graceful. He doesn't notice. He's too busy looking mildly bored, like a man who expected a better reception and possibly fewer chickens. He speaks, but not to you, never to you, his steward. An older man with a nose like a hawk's beak reads out a list. Taxes owed, labor demanded, notices served. He uses big words. Most people just nod and hope it doesn't involve more work. Suddenly, your host's name is called. She steps forward, head bowed. The steward says something about barley. She shakes her head. The noble raises an eyebrow. This isn't good. Turns out she's behind on her crop tithe. A bad harvest last season. Not enough to give. You hear the word penalty. You step forward without thinking. Everyone stares at you. You try to say something helpful, but it comes out sounding like, what if we helped? The steward slinks. The noble raises an amused eyebrow. You expect to be punished, maybe worse, but instead, the noble waves his hand dismissively. Let them sort it, he says, and rides on. The villagers exhale. You might have just made a friend, or painted a target on your back. One claps you on the shoulder. Brave, they say, or stupid. You nod. Both, you reply. Here's the thing. Nobles rarely interacted with peasants unless they wanted something. Taxes, labor, or favors. And the law? Let's just say it bent heavily in the nobles' favor. Your host is grateful, but also worried. You've drawn attention. That's never safe here. Later, as the carts are unpacked and the noble's entourage sets up temporary camp, you sneak a look at their supplies. Fresh bread, wine, fruits, dried meats, even sugar. Real sugar. You haven't seen anything white and edible in days. You ask a nearby servant about the food. She sneers. For his lordship, not for us. She looks at your clothes. You're not one of them. You nod. Definitely not. And here's your daily fringe fact. Sugar was so rare and expensive in medieval England that it was considered a spice, not a sweet. Nobles used it to show off. Peasants used honey, if they were lucky. By evening, the noble is gone, off to visit another estate. The village relaxes. People talk again, laugh again. You see your host exhale for the first time all day. That one, she says of the noble, thinks he was born with a crown. You ask if he's king. She snorts. No, just rich enough to pretend. Over supper, turnip stew with a pinch of someone's emergency herbs, the talk turns to status. One man complains about taxes. A woman says her cousin tried to marry into a merchant family to escape field work. Another says they knew a servant who saw the king once, from a distance, and he had the face of a goose. No one here has power, no one expects it, but everyone dreams about it. You lie back on your grain sack, thinking about what it would take to be noble here. Land, bloodline, luck. One wrong sneeze and you're branded a witch. One right marriage and you're sitting at a table with sugar and meat. Reginald crawls onto your sleeves. You brush him off gently. Even fleas have their place in this system. You stare into the night and realize something chilling. You're not just living in the past. You're living in a world built entirely on hierarchy. And you're very, very far from the top. Morning arrives with the sound of shouting and singing. You can't tell which exactly, because someone is trying to do both at once. You peek outside and see the baker's son wobbling down the lane with a basket of stale loaves on his head and a melody that sounds suspiciously like a goat being strangled. You smile, in spite of yourself. It's barely dawn, but this village doesn't sleep in. You're already behind. You stretch, or try to, but your back cracks like a tree branch. Sleeping on straw for this many nights has made your spine feel like a stack of mismatched bones. You glance around for the goat, your grumpy, wheezing bedmate, but it's gone. Probably out chewing something important, like the village's only broom. You head outside, just in time to nearly collide with a girl carrying a basket of firewood. She rolls her eyes and mutters, "Men," which stings, considering your current role here is somewhere between lost tourist and accidental extra laborer. You're quickly pulled into the day's chores, gathering eggs, which involves more scratches than it should, hauling water, still from that suspiciously frog-infested well, and trying to coax a sheep into staying in one spot. It does not. You give up. Then comes the awkward part. Midway through your attempts at pretending to be helpful, you're called to the side by your host. She clears her throat and says, "You've not met Alice yet, have you?" No, you haven't. She gestures toward a young woman across the yard. She's weaving a basket, sitting in the shade, hair pulled back with a scrap of faded cloth. She looks up briefly, squints at you, and then continues weaving like she's seen enough to know you're not worth stopping for. Well, your host nudges. She's near marrying age. And you, well, no one's sure what you are, but you have arms and a back, and that's most of it. Wait, what? He blinked. Are you trying to marry me off? She shrugs. Everyone has to end up somewhere. And here we are, medieval matchmaking, where Tinder is replaced with knowing how many chickens someone owns and whether their parents died of something normal. Here's your historical fact for today. In medieval England, marriage was often less about romance and more about property, alliances, and survival. Most women had little to no say in their marital future, and men, well, men didn't have much more. Quirky tidbit? It wasn't unusual for marriages to be arranged with only verbal contracts, no priest required, just a handshake, a witness, and maybe a goat. Historians still argue whether peasant marriages were loveless arrangements or practical partnerships forged under the pressure of survival. The truth probably lived somewhere in the space between awkward glances and shared firewood. Later that day, Alice approaches you. She's direct. So, you're the one from the West. You nod. If you can't thatch worth anything. You nod again. She squints at you. Know how to plant barley? You hesitate, then say, I could probably Google it. She frowns. Is that like coughing? You drop it. She moves on. And yet she walks beside you as you haul water. She corrects your grip on the bucket. You thank her. She rolls her eyes again, but this time it's less annoyed, more amused. You ask if she wants to be married. She snorts. To whom? The pig boy, or that man who eats like a duck and smells like liver? You point out she's talking to you. I didn't say I wanted to marry you, she says, but she doesn't walk away. You're called to help repair a fence. She follows, plops down nearby and keeps weaving her basket. She tells you stories about the village, who kissed who behind the mill, who's hiding silver spoons in their garden, which cow gives milk that tastes like cabbage. You're enthralled, not because the stories are scandalous, well, some of them are, but because she delivers them like tiny performances, dry wit, perfect timing. You like her, and in a world where most people look at you like you one bad cough away from demon possession, that matters. Here's something strange. For the first time since arriving, you don't feel completely alien. You help her gather herbs near the edge of the woods. She knows what everything is. Yarrow for wounds, valerian for sleep. Don't touch the red one unless you want to see ghosts. You ask if she's ever seen one. She smirks. Only when men talk too much. You return at dusk, arms full of greenery and knees covered in dirt. The others nod as you pass. You're part of the rhythm now, even if just barely. Dinner is oat porridge with dried berries, an upgrade from stew. Alice sits nearby, not next to you, but not far either. Your host whispers, she laughed at something you said. That's rare. You're doomed. You finish your porridge in silence, trying not to smile. Later that night, under the stars, you lie on your usual sack of straw. You think about Alice, about arranged marriages, about the girl who thinks Google is a medical condition. You wonder what your life would look like if you stayed here, if you leaned in, if you became a part of this tiny world instead of trying to escape it. Then you remember the fleas, the well water, and your back pain. Still, it's a thought. A quiet, dangerous thought. You're getting used to waking up with the goat. It's still not pleasant, mind you. He has morning breath like a compost pile, but it no longer startles you. You open your eyes, roll over, and mutter good morning as he snorts in your face. That's the rhythm now. Goat, smoke, itchy tunic, bread, ale. But today feels different. The village is stirring with a strange kind of energy. Not panic, but something close, urgent, focused. People are talking fast, moving faster, hauling buckets and tools with a sort of grim determination. Even Alice looks tense, which is unusual because her default expression is somewhere between amused and bored. You ask what's going on. Someone's sick, she says, in the next village over. Freeze. Sick how? She shrugs. Coughing, fever, black spots. Your stomach turns cold. You don't need to be a historian or a time traveler to know what that probably means. The plague. You'd hoped you wouldn't get this far, hoped you'd be whisked home before things got truly medieval. But no, you're still here, and now death is knocking politely on the door next village over. Your host sends you to help reinforce the fencing around the pig pen, because obviously nothing says prevent disease like pig-based errands. But you go. You hammer. You sweat. You keep your thoughts quiet. Here's your mainstream historical fact. The Black Death reached England in 1348 and wiped out somewhere between a third and half of the population. That's not a typo. Half. Entire villages vanished. Families gone in a week. The land grew quieter, and not in a peaceful way. Quirky tidbit. Some people thought the plague was caused by bad air or sinful thoughts. Others blamed astrology, dogs, strangers, or even, bizarrely, bathing too often. Historians still argue whether the plague's spread was due to poor sanitation or trade routes. It was probably both. The fleas got around. So did the fear. You overhear a group of men whispering about smoke and sulfur. One swears by stuffing his nose with dried flowers. Another insists garlic in the shoes will keep death away. A boy ties a toad to his belt, just in case. You don't ask what the case is, or what the toad thinks about all this. At the well you catch Alice boiling water, a rare luxury. She's scrubbing her hands with crushed rosemary and cursing under her breath. You look worried, you say. Always worried, she replies. People just notice it more now. You help her carry the water back. She asks what plagues were like where you come from. You nearly slip. Worse, you say, but at least we had soap. Soaps for the dead, she says, or the French. It's meant as a joke, but the air doesn't quite allow it to land. By midday, the priest announces a prayer vigil. He says it's time to humble yourselves before God, and also, by the way, to stay indoors after sunset. No fires, no music, no laughter, he warns. It draws the wrong kind of spirits. Everyone nods solemnly. You nod too, though a part of you is wondering how you're going to manage sleeping silently while the goat practices his nighttime opera routine. Later that afternoon, a group of villagers goes to the edge of the woods to burn old clothing and sweep out the bakehouse. You're handed a broom and a sprig of juniper to hang over the door. For purification, they say. You ask if it works. A man shrugs, makes it smell better, and smells half the battle. You find yourself thinking about modern hospitals, about masks and gloves and the smell of antiseptic, about how lucky you were to live when medicine didn't involve prayers and frogs. But here the best you can hope for is a clean floor and a strong constitution. You return to the cottage as the sun begins to sink, and a strange hush falls over the village. Fires are low, windows are shuttered, even the children are quiet. The air feels heavier, charged. At dinner, no one speaks. Just the sound of spoons scraping bowls, someone chewing a little too loud, and your own heartbeat thudding like a drum. You don't even know if the illness will come here. But that's the thing about fear. It doesn't wait for facts. You lie awake on your straw bed watching the flicker of candlelight on the rafters. Your host mutters a prayer in the corner. Alice is nearby, her back turned, the lavender bundle clutched tight in her hands. You wish you could do something, fix something, explain germ theory, invent antibiotics. But you can't. You don't even know what year it is. There are no dates here, just days. Long, quiet days. Then the bell tolls. Once. Twice. A third time. It rings. A death. Anyone speaks. No one moves. You lie there in the dark, eyes wide, hands gripping your blanket. And suddenly the goat's snoring feels oddly comforting. By morning, it's official. Someone from the neighboring village has died. Not from old age or a farming accident. From the sickness. The one that makes your skin go black and your breath turn to smoke. Your host says it while stirring the porridge, low, almost whispering. Plague. And just like that, everything changes. The rhythm of life, if you could call mud stew and endless scratching a rhythm, shatters. Villagers move differently now, faster, but somehow smaller. Everyone tries to seem invisible, like if they lower their eyes or hold their breath long enough, death might pass them by. You're given new chores today, grave digging, not because someone here has died, not yet, but because the priest says, we must be ready. Those words chill you more than the weather. You follow two boys to the edge of the woods, where the ground's been dug before. The earth is soft from recent rains. It smells like wet leaves and something darker, something final. You try not to think about what you're digging. You try not to notice that the others keep looking over their shoulders. Here's your mainstream historical fact. During plague outbreaks, death came so quickly and in such numbers that entire burial systems collapsed. Mass graves became the norm. Bodies were often left unattended for days before someone dared to move them. Quirky detail. In some areas, plague doctors were hired. Men in beaked masks stuffed with herbs. But in most English villages no such figures existed. The average person relied on neighbours and prayers, not long-nosed strangers. Historians still argue whether the plague was spread more by fleas or by airborne droplets. Either way, you're surrounded by people who believe it's a curse or punishment. No one mentions rats. No one sees rats. Just the coughing, the fever, the silence that follows. By midday the priest blesses the graves. You expect a sermon. Instead he just nods. God sees, he says, then walks away. You eat in silence. The stew tastes like ash even though it's the same watery turnip mush you've had for days. People pass around a sprig of rosemary and hold it to their noses. It's supposed to keep the illness out. You do it too, just in case. Alice finds you later, sitting near the fence, arms wrapped around your knees. You look pale, she says. I've been pale since I got here, you reply. It's my whole thing. She sits beside you. You both stare at the woods. She tells you stories, softly, like if she says them too loud, they'll shatter. About the last plague, when she was a baby, how her mother died, how the village used to be twice this size. We forget easy, she says. That's why we laugh so loud, and drink too much, and marry people we barely like. You nod. So, you're not marrying me then? She snorts. Not unless you get me 3 goats and a working spine. Fair. You walk with her to the stream where she washes her hands, again and again, even though the water is freezing. If I die, she says casually, promise you won't let them put me in the mass pit. He frees. Don't talk like that. Drugs. Better to say it now, before you're coughing and too tired to argue. You promise. She makes you repeat it, twice. That night the fire is smaller than usual. People don't want too much smoke. It might carry sickness. The children have stopped running around. No music, no laughter. Just the creaking of old wood and the occasional bleat of a goat who, apparently, doesn't fear death in the slightest. You lie on your side, watching the flicker of the embers. You've tried to hold it together, but the fear is gnawing now, cold and sharp, like teeth on your ribs. And then someone starts coughing. Not far, just outside. The room goes still, no one breathes. Then a shuffle, the sound of retreating footsteps, a door closing. No one speaks. You think of the graves you dug. Here's a fun fringe fact. In some parts of medieval England, people hung bells around their necks if they were suspected to be ill, to warn others, to announce death before it arrived. In other areas, the infected were simply locked in their homes and left. You pull your blanket tighter around your shoulders, as if it could ward off not just the cold, but history itself. Alice sleeps nearby, one hand under her head, the other curled into a fist. You watch her chest rise and fall, slow and steady. You close your eyes and picture a world with no doctors, no vaccines, no hospitals, just fear and dirt, and the prayer that your body doesn't betray you. That night you dream of fire and bells and a cart being pulled through a village whispering, "Bring out your dead." You wake up to silence. You wake up sweating. Not because of the fire, it burned low in the night, barely more than a few glowing coals, but because of the dream. Something about a procession of pale faces and a priest with no eyes. You can't remember the rest, just that it ended with a door slamming and you alone in a field of bones. You sit up, clutching your tunic like a blanket that offers protection. It doesn't. The village is quiet. Too quiet. No morning clatter. No children chasing pigs. Just the sound of crows circling somewhere out near the fields. Then a scream. Short, sharp, and far enough away to sound like a memory, but it makes your stomach drop. Scramble outside. A small crowd has formed near the edge of the village, where the trees begin. They're gathered around something lying in the grass. You approach slowly. Alice is already there. She doesn't look at you, just keeps staring at the figure on the ground. It's a man, young, maybe 20. You've seen him once or twice. He worked near the mill. His lips are blue, his face waxy. One hand clutches a rosary, the other is blackened at the fingertips. The priest is already speaking, a prayer fast and low, barely audible. No one gets close. No one touches the body. They just watch. Then someone mutters, "The forest did it." You're confused. The forest. Another voice agrees. That's where it comes from. The sickness. There's a ripple of nervous nods, people backing away from the tree line, glancing toward the woods as if expecting the plague to emerge, snarling from the branches like a wild dog. And here it is, the village's favorite scapegoat. Not rats, not fleas, but the forest. Here's your mainstream historical fact. In medieval Europe, forests were often viewed as dark, dangerous places, full of wolves, spirits, and outlaws. They were feared as places where the laws of man and God didn't quite reach. And your quirky tidbit? Some communities believed the woods were alive, not metaphorically, but literally. That the trees whispered, plotted, even punished. Whole songs were written warning children not to sleep too close to root and shadow. Historians still argue whether this fear of the forest was cultural myth or survival instinct. But in a world without maps, without Google Earth, without a flashlight, the forest is a mystery, and the unknown is always terrifying. That evening a meeting is held in the center of the village. You're not invited exactly, but no one stops you from listening. The discussion is fierce, voices raised. Some want to burn the edge of the woods, others say to stay away and let it be. The priest suggests prayer. But where? Someone else asks. We don't even know what's there. No answer. Finally, the steward of the manor, older, thin, with a voice like dry grass, declares that a warding ritual will be held. No one goes near the forest. No one cuts wood. No one walks the paths. If you have trees near your home, you must hang garlic and ash from your doors. He glanced toward the tree line. In the dark, it looks like a wall of black teeth, watching. Later, back at the house, Alice is sharpening a knife. Not for cooking, just sharpening. Her hands are steady, but her eyes aren't. You ask if she believes the forest is cursed. She shrugs. It's not the trees, it's what people do when they're scared. That's what's cursed. You nod, slowly. She glances at you. If it comes here, she says quietly, don't let them put me in the pit. You already made me promise. Promise again. You do. And sparse. The stew has less in it. People are eating slower, like the food might run out tomorrow. Maybe it will. No one went to the fields today. The baker didn't light his oven. The rhythm of the village, the one you were finally learning, is unraveling. You sit with your host near the fire. She's humming something, a lullaby. It reminds you of something, but you can't place it. When she finishes, she looks over at you and says, "This is how it starts. People stop singing." You try to smile. "Then I'll sing badly just to make sure we're cursed and annoyed." She laughs, quietly, then coughs, just once. You pretend not to notice. That night, sleep doesn't come easy. The goat has wandered off. Your straw pillow feels damp. The fire doesn't crackle the same way. You close your eyes and picture a modern hospital. White walls, clean sheets, beeping monitors, air that smells like antiseptic instead of smoke and garlic. But you're not there. You're here, in a village that's shrinking by the day. And outside, the forest waits. The morning air is thicker than usual, damp with a strange sweetness, like flowers left too long in a vase. You sit up slowly, half expecting the forest to be crawling into the village like some vine-covered beast. But no, the trees are still where they were, silent, watching. Breakfast is skipped. No one's hungry, or no one wants to look like they are. Instead, you're summoned to help with the new ritual. The priest wants a circle of protection laid at the village's edge. Ashes, herbs, crosses made from branches. To ward off the unholy, he says. To keep the sickness where it belongs. So that's how your morning begins, tying garlic to sticks and jabbing them into the ground like you're planting tiny angry flags. Alice is with you, silent, focused. She hands you a bundle of dried lavender. "Tuck it into your tunic," she says. "Smells better than fear." You do as she says. Then, from the far end of the green, a commotion. 2 men dragging someone. A woman, screaming, kicking, crying out something about dreams and bones and whispers in the trees. It's Maud, the healer. You remember her. The hunched old woman with hands like roots and a mind full of plant names. The one who gave you lavender. The one who told you not to eat the red flower unless you wanted to meet ghosts. Now the villagers are dragging her to the chapel. "Cursed us," someone shouts. She walks the woods. She speaks to birds. Hugh knew the sickness would come. Alice grabs your arm. Her nails dig into your sleeve. You try to move toward Maud, but she holds you back. "Don't," she whispers. "You'll make it worse." Here's your mainstream historical fact. In times of crisis, especially during the plague years, accusations of witchcraft surged. Healers, midwives, outsiders, anyone who stood apart were easy scapegoats. Fear needed a target. Quirky tidbit: some believed witches caused illness by cursing wells or speaking the names of the dead backward. Others believed a witch's shadow could spoil milk or kill crops. Science hadn't quite caught up yet. Historians still argue whether the witch trials were about religion, power, or gender. But in villages like this, it was often just fear, boiling over. Maud is thrown inside the chapel. The priest slams the door. People cheer. Some spit. Do you want to scream? To explain that disease doesn't work like this? That she didn't cause anything? But no one would understand. You'd sound like her. And you've seen how that ends. Later, Alice brings a bowl of thin broth to the chapel door. She leaves it quietly. No one speaks. You want to ask if Maud will be let out? Alice just shakes her head. She has no husband, no children, no one to speak for her. You sit in the grass with your hands folded. She helped me, gave me herbs, taught me things. That's why they fear her, Alice says. She knows more than they do. You think about that for a long time. By midday, the sky grows dark, not from clouds, but from smoke. The villagers are burning anything that's been near the sick. Blankets, tools, entire cots. You watch the flames flicker, wondering how many memories are being turned to ash. Children aren't allowed outside anymore. Doors are shut early. You catch a glimpse of the steward painting a cross in ash above his threshold. That evening you find yourself alone at the chapel. The door is locked. Maud's broth is untouched. You crouch down beside it and whisper, "I'm sorry." Then you hear her voice, faint, dry. "Tell them, I didn't run." You don't know what to say. You just nod, even though she can't see it. Tell them the sickness came from hunger, from rats and rot and dirty hands. Not from me. You nod again. "I will." She's silent for a long time. Then, softly, "Do you dream of your own world?" You freeze. "What?" "White things," she says. "I dreamed of you before you came, wearing strange cloth, carrying light in your pocket, speaking like water." Your throat tightens. "You dreamed of me?" She doesn't answer, just hums a melody you recognize. The same one your host sang near the fire. The lullaby. The one that felt familiar. You back away slowly, not because you're afraid of her, but because you're afraid of what it means. You return to the cottage and find Alice waiting. She's wrapped in her cloak, pale and still. You tell her what Maud said. "She sees more than she should," Alice murmurs, "and that's always dangerous." Later, as the fire dies low, you ask Alice if she believes in witches. Thinks for a while. "I believe in pain, and people who survive it. If that makes them witches, so be it." You can't argue with that. You sleep poorly that night. Your dreams are tangled. Trees bending toward you, whispering in voices you almost understand. Shadows circling a fire, and Maud's voice, calling your name in a language you've never learned, but somehow know. When you wake, the chapel is empty. Maud is gone. No one says where. It's barely light when you hear the clanging. Not the soft rattle of pots, or the polite thud of someone tripping over a goat. This is sharper, hollow, rhythmic. You rise from your straw bed, your body sore, your eyes gritty from too little sleep and too many bad dreams. Outside, the villagers gathered around someone, near the well. You push your way to the front, and then you see it. A boy, maybe 15, arms bound, face streaked with dirt and tears, standing stock still in the wooden stocks. 2 thick pieces of wood clamp around his neck and wrists, holding him bent and exposed. He's shaking. Someone has already thrown a turnip at him. "What did he do?" you whisper. A man beside you grunts. "Stole a loaf from the steward's cart." You blink. "Just bread?" "Where is bread?" You look around. No one looks happy about it, but no one is stopping it either, because here, even punishment is public theatre. Here's your mainstream historical fact. In medieval England, the stocks and pillories were common forms of public punishment. You didn't just serve time, you served shame. The goal wasn't reform, it was humiliation. Quirky tidbit: animals were sometimes put on trial too. In 1386, a pig in France was convicted and executed for murdering a child. And yes, she was dressed in human clothes for her execution. Because why not? Historians still argue whether these punishments maintained order or just satisfied a darker kind of social entertainment. But to you, standing in a silent, stone-faced crowd as a crying boy is pelted with vegetables, it feels like fear in a costume. You step forward. Alice pulls you back, hard. "Don't," she hisses. "Don't make this your fight." You grit your teeth. He's just a kid. And you're just a stranger. You want them to call you a witch next? You stop, because she's right, and because Maud's fate is still fresh in everyone's mind. Later, you try to slip the boy some food. He refuses, not because he's proud, because he's scared. If they see, he mutters, they'll say, "You're in league with me." That night he's released, limping, humiliated. He doesn't look at anyone. No one cheers. No one comforts him. Even his own mother avoids his eyes. You hate this place, but you also understand it, sort of, in a twisted survivalist way. When there's no justice from above, you invent it. When there's no police, no court, no rights, you turn to stocks, shame and superstition, because something has to fill the vacuum, even if it's cruelty in a wooden box. You wander the village as the sun climbs. Everywhere you look, the signs of fear are visible. Painted crosses, herbs nailed to doorposts, chickens slaughtered early, just in case. And then there's the priest, burning something in a brass pot and muttering Latin over the ashes. You approach him, carefully. "What's it for?" you ask. He doesn't look at you, just keeps swinging the pot. To purify, to drive back wickedness. You pause. And if that doesn't work? He finally looks at you, eyes dark, tired. Then we endure. We walk away, not sure whether to be comforted or terrified. By late afternoon, you're called to help dig another grave. A woman this time, no black spots, just a cough that didn't go away. You help lower her body into the ground. Someone sobs, someone sings. As the sun sets, you see the steward again, pacing the manor path. He looks nervous, sweating, clutching a book of names like it's armor. You wonder what he's afraid of. The plague, the people, himself. Back at the house, your host is quiet, stirring a pot of something watery, staring at nothing. You ask her how long she's lived here. She blinks. "All my life." "You want to leave?" She doesn't answer. Then Alice speaks. "Leave for where? The next village?" "They're worse." You press. "What about a city, a port, somewhere new?" Your host snorts. "To be someone else's servant? To die in a crowd instead of in the field? No, we have roots here." Roots. That word again. You think of Maud, of the forest, of the way everyone here clings to dirt as if it can save them. After dinner, a few villagers gather in the green for a kind of distraction. Someone sets up a stool and begins miming. No words, just gestures. It's funny, oddly clever. Even Alice chuckles. For a few minutes, people laugh. They forget. But then the mimic slips, makes a joke too close to the steward's hunched walk. Everyone freezes. He stands slowly, crosses his arms. You think that's funny? No one speaks. He walks away. The laughter dies. You walk Alice back to her door. She pauses there, looking at you in the dim light. "You're not from the West, are you?" You say nothing. She doesn't push, just sighs. "Doesn't matter. You're here now." He nods. "For now." Then, just before she closes the door, she says, "Be careful who you make laugh. It's easy to become the next one in the stocks." You sleep uneasy, dreams of wooden frames and jeering crowds, of bells and ropes and masks you can't take off. The fire crackles, a dog howls in the distance, and for the first time, you wonder, if this is all a dream, why does it hurt so much? You wake to rain, not a drizzle, not a polite mist. Real rain, hard, cold and punishing. It hammers the thatched roof like it's trying to come in, drips between the cracks in the beams, and soaks your bedding with a kind of indifference only nature can pull off. You blink up at the ceiling, watching the droplets fall, one by one, into the corner where the goat usually sleeps. The goat is not here. This alarms you more than it should. Outside, the village is struggling. Mud has claimed everything. The paths are no longer paths, they're soup. Chickens wade through puddles like feathered boats. Someone is chasing a duck with a stick. You don't ask why. Your host hands you a cloak made of heavy wool and oilskin. Try not to drown, she mutters. That's the morning's version of "have a nice day." Today you've been asked to help settle accounts, which sounds financial. It isn't. It means walking with the steward and a few assistants to gather taxes in kind, barley, wool, salted meat, from villagers who are, by now, scraping the bottom of their storage pots. And you're the neutral presence, the unfamiliar face, the one no one trusts but no one blames yet. You trail behind the steward, whose face is red from cold and power. He carries a ledger, thick and soggy. One assistant has a spear, just for show. The other carries an empty basket, ready to be filled with the goods of people who probably can't spare them. At the first house, an old man offers dried onions and a cracked wooden spoon. "All I have," he says. The steward nods. Then, "That is what you owe." At the second house, the tenant is not home. The steward takes a chicken instead. It screams the entire walk to the next house. You can't help but mutter, "This feels wrong." The steward turns. Wrong is when men don't pay. Wrong is when the field is empty and no one feeds the manor. This is right. This is how order survives. He falls silent. Here's your mainstream historical fact. In medieval England, peasants were legally bound to their lord. They owed labour, product, and loyalty. In return, they received land to work. Quirky tidbit? Some lords invented bizarre dues, like a fine if a woman married a man from another village, or a pig tax. Or, incredibly, a charge for collecting firewood on noble soil. Historians still argue whether these arrangements were exploitive or mutually beneficial. The peasants had land, but never truly owned it, and when harvests failed, they paid anyway. Back in the present, well, your borrowed present, you help the steward carry the goods back to the manor storehouse. It's dry in there, the air warm from smoke and the walls lined with hanging meats and sacks of grain. It smells like preservation and quiet greed. The steward offers you bread, white bread, fine, soft, almost glowing. You hesitate, but hunger wins. You take it. It's the best thing you've eaten in weeks. He watches you chew. "You're useful," he says, "not like the rest." You force a smile. "You ever think about staying?" he asks. "There's always need for men who understand authority, foreign or not." You try to swallow. It sticks. You leave soon after, back into the mud, back to the others. Alice finds you near the well, your cloak dripping, your boots caked in filth. "What were you doing with him?" "Helping," you say. "Helping how?" You pause. "I'm not sure anymore." She studies you. You've got that look, like you just realized the wolf you've been feeding is in your own house. You glance toward the manor. She's not wrong. That evening, the rain keeps falling. The fires burn low. No one wants to gather too close. Not since the coughing started in the next row of cottages. Not since the second death. You sit under the overhang beside the bakehouse, watching the puddles turn into streams. Alice joins you. She hands you a crust of rye bread. Not soft, not glowing, but honest. "Tell me about your world," she says. You hesitate. Then you tell her about light that comes from glass bulbs, about towers that send voices through the air, about food that never spoils, about carriages that don't need horses, about doctors who wear gloves. She listens, not shocked, just quiet. Sounds like a land where lords would be very afraid. You chuckle. Some of them are. She grins, just a little. Good. Then, if I asked you to take me with you, could you? You go still. The rain hums between your shoulders. "I don't know how to get back," you admit. "I don't even know if I'm here to begin with." She leans back against the wall. "That's the most honest thing I've heard all week." As night falls, you return to the cottage. The fire is warm, the air heavy, the silence thick. The goat is back, chewing calmly, as if nothing outside exists. You curl up beside it, unsure of which world you belong to, the one where bread is soft and power has rules, or this one, where survival is measured in root vegetables and rumors. Your last thought before sleep is this: what would you give to go home? And what would you leave behind? You wake to a smell that is, without question, worse than death. It hits you before your eyes open, thick, sour, and ancient. You gag, roll over, and immediately regret it, as your face finds the straw mat soaked in last night's rain and something else you can't, and won't, identify. The goat seems unbothered, but then again, he once tried to eat a shoe. You push yourself upright, blinking through the smoky gloom. The fire's long gone out, and someone's already flung the shutters wide. Morning light pours in, along with the smell. You stumble outside, looking for fresh air and maybe a reason not to cry. And that's when it hits you. No one in this village has bathed in weeks. You. Welcome to the part of history where hygiene is, let's say, improvised. Here's your mainstream historical fact. In medieval England, bathing was rare and often discouraged. Public bathhouses existed in cities, but were associated with immorality and disease. In the countryside, you had rivers, buckets, and prayers. And your quirky tidbit? Some folks believed water opened the pores and let illness seep in. That's right, washing could make you sicker. Many medieval people would rub themselves with dry cloths, sprinkle herbs under their arms, or simply ignore the smell. Generational olfactory numbness was very real. Historians still argue whether people truly avoided water out of fear, or if it was just too much effort, in a world where heating it took hours, and soap was made from ashes and regret. Today, however, the village has declared it Wash Day. You have no idea what that entails, but it sounds suspiciously ambitious. Alice finds you near the well, arms crossed, hair wild. You smell like wet bread, she says cheerfully. You smell like someone cursed a cheese wheel. She smiles. It's affection, you're pretty sure. You're handed a bucket, a handful of mint leaves, and a coarse rag that used to be a tunic sleeve. A group has gathered near the riverbank, stripping down in awkward groups. Men on one side, women on the other, with a few screens of hanging cloth strung up for privacy, which is generous. You shuffle toward the male side, clutching your dignity and a sleeve of mint. Someone hands you a bar of soap the size and texture of a brick. Don't eat it, they warn. You glance down. The river is cold, not refreshing cold, betrayal cold. You ease in anyway, toes first, then knees, then bam, immersion. It hits your lungs like a punch. You gasp loud enough to startle a duck. The others laugh. You're the entertainment now. A man nearby slaps the water and shouts, "Welcome to paradise," as his teeth chatter. You scrub, furiously. The mint leaf dissolves almost immediately. The soap doesn't lather so much as smear, leaving behind a faint smell of fat and ashes. You scrub anyway. Hair, arms, chest, even under your tunic. When, in medieval Rome, you catch Alice peeking through a gap in the cloth screen. She gives you a look that says, "You missed a spot." You roll your eyes. She vanishes again. Someone nearby starts singing, loud and off-key. The whole river joins in. It's not a tune you know, but it feels familiar, like a shared joke with no punchline. You humour along. When you finally climb out, your skin is raw, your feet are numb, and your hair smells slightly less like barn. You feel alive, for the first time in days, maybe even clean. You wrap yourself in a mostly dry tunic and squish your way back toward the cottages. That's when it happens. A small group of children runs past, giggling. One shouts, "The foreigner's finally clean." Another adds, "He'll draw witches now." He blinked. "Sorry, what?" Your host overhears. She chuckles darkly. "Too clean," she says. "Folk might start talking." What does that even mean? Clean hands, clean nails, clean clothes. makes people nervous, makes you look like you're hiding something. Fantastic. In a world where dirt is virtue, your freshly washed face is suspicious. You decide to dirty yourself a little, just in case. Rub some ash on your forearms, smudge some river mud on your sleeve, blend in. Later, as people prepare supper, you overhear a whispered conversation, as naked in the river. They all work. Yes, but he didn't shiver. I think he's immune. Or cursed. You sigh. Alice smirks when you tell her, "This is why I don't bathe." It explains everything. She flicks water at you. Dinner is, mercifully, not stew tonight. It's boiled barley with wild mushrooms and something pickled. You don't ask. You just eat. Everyone does. No one wants to talk much. Not since a third house shuttered its windows this morning. You sit by the fire afterward, your skin dry and tight, your hair tangled but mostly flea-free. Reginald, the flea overlord, may be gone, or biding his time. Alice sits beside you, close but not touching. "You smell like someone trying too hard," she says. "You smell like someone not trying at all." Pause, then laughter, real, tired and badly needed. You lie back and stare at the rafters. Somewhere, a rat is chewing through something important. A dog barks in the distance. A woman coughs once, twice. You try not to count the coughs anymore. You're clean now, but that doesn't mean safe. You're woken up before dawn by someone poking you in the ribs with a spoon. "Up," your host says. "You're going to the monastery today." You blink. Why? Because they have space, and you've been muttering in your sleep again. Fair enough. She hands you a sack of bread and a hard-boiled egg. "For the road," she says. "And so you don't eat their books." You think it's a joke. You hope it's a joke. A few minutes later, you're walking down a narrow dirt path lined with frost-kissed weeds, following a boy with a lantern and a runny nose. The sun isn't up yet. The moon is fading like an old bruise. Everything's quiet. Unnaturally so. You've heard about the monastery. Everyone has. It's a place of rules and silence and prayers, and most importantly, beer. Good beer. Monks here are said to brew the kind of ale that warms your soul and possibly shortens your lifespan, depending on the batch. After nearly an hour of walking through wet grass and muttered curses from your guide, he drops the lantern twice. You see it. The monastery rises from the mist like something out of a dream, or a very detailed museum diorama. Stone walls, slate roofs, wooden scaffolding here and there, and a small tower where a bell hangs silently. You expected it to be larger, grand. But this place is humble, slightly lopsided, and smells like wet parchment. A monk greets you at the gate. He has the look of someone who hasn't slept in weeks, but has prayed plenty. His robe is tied with fraying rope, and his sandals are more hole than shoe. "Peace be with you," he says, then adds, "Please, don't touch anything." You're ushered inside. The walls are cool, the air smells of beeswax and ink, and your footsteps echo like you've done something wrong. Welcome to sacred silence. Here's your monastery's historical fact. Monasteries in medieval England were more than just religious centres. They were libraries, hospitals, breweries, farms, and places of refuge. Monks preserved knowledge, brewed beer, copied texts, and occasionally muttered about how awful everyone else smelled. Quirky tidbit? Some monks had to take a vow of silence, but developed their own sign language so they could still gossip. Humans, after all, will always find a way to whisper, "Did you see what Brother Cedric did?" Historians still argue whether monasteries were havens of learning or tools of control. Probably both. Either way, if you wanted quiet, clean floors, and terrible bread, this was the place. The first thing you're given is a seat, then a slab of bread so dense it might be weaponized, then a cup of ale, strong, dark, and slightly fizzy. It tastes like toasted nuts and regret. You love it. The monks don't ask where you're from. They assume you're another lost traveler, a penitent, someone running from something. They're not wrong. You meet Brother William. He's younger than the others and tasked with showing you around. He doesn't talk much at first, just points and nods, but eventually opens up once you compliment his handwriting. Apparently, copying manuscripts earns him bragging rights. He shows you the scriptorium, a long, cold room where monks bend over parchment, scratching out letters in perfect, painstaking Latin. Some use quills, one uses a sharpened reed. All of them have ink stains on their fingers, and the 1,000-yard stare of people who've written the same words 17 times in a row. You ask what they're working on. Psalms, sermons, a bestiary, and a list of sins. How long is the list? He sighs. Later, he lets you look at one of the books. Look, not touch. The pages are thick, nearly leather, the ink dark and heavy. Each letter is art. You're in awe, not just of the content, but of the fact that a dozen men gave their lives to preserve it. Here's a bonus fact. Parchment was made from animal skin, calf mostly. That book in your hand might have taken a hurried herd. At lunch, the monks eat in silence, while one of them reads scripture aloud. You chew slowly, not daring to crunch too loud. The meal is boiled leeks, oat gruel, and more of that bread. You wish for stew, the goat back home, anything. Brother William leans over and whispers, "On feast days, we get dried fish, and if God is very generous, cheese." You nod solemnly. God bless cheese. In the afternoon, you help in the garden, pulling weeds, turning soil, narrowly avoiding an argument with a beetle the size of your thumb. The monk beside you hums under his breath, something tuneless but calming. The rhythm of hands in dirt, of silence, of simplicity. And yet, under it all, you sense something else. Monks talk, not with words, with glances, with pauses. There are rumours. A noble passing through last week, paid for prayers with coins that didn't ring right. A brother who coughed blood and disappeared quietly during the night. The cart seen slipping out the back gate before dawn, covered in cloth. They don't say plague, but you hear it anyway. At Vespers you sit in the chapel, listening to chants echo through the cold air. It's haunting, comforting, like someone singing to the bones of the earth. Close your eyes and for a moment you forget the dirt, the pain, the fear. Then, someone sneezes. Every head turns. The moment ends. You stay the night. The guest cot is slightly softer than your straw mat back in the village, but only because it doesn't come with a goat. William leaves you a candle, in case you need to pray, he says. You don't pray. You read the wax flicker and wonder how many more days you have before the forest returns, before the coughing spreads, before you forget your own name. The candle burns low. You close your eyes and dream of letters melting off pages into your hands. You wake to bells. Not church bells, the sharp ceremonial kind. These are low, slow, and ominous. The kind of sound that makes you sit up before your brain even knows why. You swing your legs over the side of the cot. Your body's sore from sleeping on monk-approved minimalism, and your mouth tastes like boiled leeks and regret. You shuffle toward the narrow window slit and look out. A rider is approaching the monastery gates at full gallop. Mud flies from the hooves, the horse foam-flecked and wide-eyed. You know what this means. Before you even see the blood-streaked tunic, before you hear the shouting, you just know. The war has come. Brother William rushes past you, sandals slapping the stone floor. "To the gates," someone shouts. You follow, heart pounding. At the gatehouse, monks gather in tight clusters. The rider slides off his horse, barely standing. He's young, barely more than a boy, his hands trembling as he gasps something you can't quite catch. Then he says it clearly. The Baron has raised his banner. Which, to be clear, is medieval for someone's very rich, very angry. And now, you're all in danger. You glance at Brother William. What's going on? He answers without looking at you. The Lord's declared war on his neighbor. Over what? Land, sheep, God knows. It doesn't matter. And suddenly you remember. This is a time where war doesn't need a reason, it just needs a banner. Here's your mainstream historical fact. In medieval England, conflict between nobles was practically seasonal. A border dispute here, an insult there, a marriage gone sideways, and swords were drawn. Peasants had no say but paid the price in labour, blood, or both. Quirky tidbit? Banners were everything. Knights would ride into battle under personal flags embroidered by their mothers. If you lost your banner in the chaos, huge dishonour, might as well go home and take up pottery. Historians still argue whether these constant skirmishes were strategic or just testosterone and boredom wearing metal. Either way, the peasants rarely knew why anyone was fighting. By mid-morning, the monastery has shifted into a war shelter. Supplies are moved, doors barred. A few of the monks carry actual weapons, rusty polearms, and one sword that looks ceremonial at best. You're handed a wooden staff. It's a walking stick, really. But someone tells you to aim for the legs if anyone attacks. They bleed the same down there, he says with a wink. You nod, slowly. Comforted? Not exactly. By noon, the village sends a message. Soldiers are passing through, armed, hungry, not friendly. You ask to go back, to check on Alice, your host, the goat. You're denied. They'll head for the fields first, Brother William says. Not here, not yet. You're not reassured. Afternoon brings smoke on the horizon. Not the gentle stew-making kind, the thick, angry, burning kind. Someone begins to pray, another vomits. You grip your stick. And then, just as quickly, it passes. No attack, no soldiers, just the smell of fire, the sound of horses in the distance, and the distant memory of safety evaporating. That night, the monks open the ale stores. Brother William finds you under a half-corrected wagon near the garden wall. He hands you a cup. It's the strong stuff, he says, brewed in secret. Don't tell the abbot. You drink. It's sweet, heavy, and burns like honesty. You ever fight? You ask. He snorts. Once, over a chicken. I lost. You both laugh, softly, just enough to remind yourselves you're alive. Then he turns serious. If war comes here, you should run. To where? Anywhere, it doesn't matter. Just don't be standing in the doorway when the banners arrive. You sleep in the scriptorium that night, curled up beside a stack of dried vellum and a candle stub. The air smells like ink and dust. You dream of helmets, of fire, of a hand reaching through smoke to pull you away. You wake before dawn and decide, you're going back? You sneak out through the side gate, past 2 snoring monks and 1 very confused cat. The road is muddy, the sky grey, but the path is clear. You follow the ruts from wagon wheels, the trail of broken branches. You reach the village by midday. Ix. No burning, no banners, but everything's quieter. Doors are barred. Fields are empty. The well is dry. You find Alice in the green, sharpening a blade. She sees you, and for a moment says nothing. Then, about time. You sit beside her. All would look different, you admit. She hands you a smaller knife. It always starts the same, with waiting. And there's your fringe detail. Not all medieval warfare was fighting. Sometimes, war just meant soldiers marching through, eating your food, burning your barn, and leaving. They didn't care who you were, only that you had things they wanted. You look up at the forest. It seems closer somehow. Think it'll reach here? You ask. Alice shrugs. If it does, we hide. If we can't, we fight. You grip the knife. You're not a warrior. But you're not helpless either. Not anymore. That night, the village gathers. Just a few families. Someone lights a fire. Someone else tells a story. Old, muddled, but comforting. It's not about war or plague. It's about a fox that married a chicken and lived happily ever after. You laugh. Not because it's funny, but because you're still here. For Mao, you're up before the sun. Not because you slept well. You didn't. No one does anymore. But because something about the air has shifted. It's colder, drier, like the village is holding its breath. You step outside, boots squelching in the half-frozen mud. Your tunic feels heavier, your body slower. Even the chickens are quiet. That's how you know it's bad, when the chickens have stopped screaming. Alice finds you by the well, her face drawn and pale. You need to see something, she says, already walking. You follow her, past the chapel, past the green, toward the forest's edge. The same forest that's haunted dreams, drawn blame and swallowed more than one unlucky soul since you arrived. She stops short and points. There's a man sitting cross-legged in the dirt, alone, not moving. You step closer, slowly. His clothes are too clean, his boots too new. He looks familiar. And then it hits you. He's not from here. Not from now. He has a watch, a real one, silver, modern, scratched. You can't breathe. You kneel beside him. His eyes are open, glossy. He doesn't blink. Sits down next to you, peering at the watch. Is that? You nod, stunned. Yeah, it is. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Time travel isn't part of the official curriculum in any medieval record. But there were tales of people who vanished, wandered into forests or mists and never returned. Some were saints, others were just gone. Quirky tidbit? In parts of medieval Britain, there were folk tales about fairy mounds and time loops. Walk in at sunset, and when you emerge, 100 years have passed. Historians, understandably, don't argue whether time travelers existed, but they do debate the origins of those vanishing people myths. Some say it was disease, some say madness, some just blame fog. You glance back at the man. His body's cold, his expression peaceful somehow. Alice leans closer. Was he like you? I think so. What happened to him? You don't have an answer. You help carry the body back to the chapel. No one argues, no one questions. He's buried quickly, quietly, no name, just a hole in the earth and a stone with a scratched mark. An arrow pointing up. The priest mutters a blessing. May he find his way home. Later you sit alone near the field. It's harvest season, or what's left of it. The crops have suffered, same as everything else. Blight in the barley, worms in the oats, a goat that refuses to milk unless someone sings to it in Latin. You run your fingers through the dirt, grounding yourself. Then the astrologer arrives. You didn't know the village had one, but apparently someone's uncle's cousin reads the stars and talks about eclipses, like they're messages from the gods. He's short, round, smells like burnt onions and speaks in riddles. The stars, he says, are not where they should be. You raise an eyebrow. You say that like it's my fault. Play twisted, he insists, as if something's trying to return. But the door's not shut right. Alice steps in. Is the world ending? Woman smiles. Not all at once. Great. Here's your fringe detail. Medieval astrologers weren't just stargazers. They were often doctors, priests, or advisors. Many believed that your health, your fate, even your soul was tied to the position of Saturn on your birthday. Misalignments? Total catastrophe. You're not sure you believe in cosmic doors, but you do believe something is pulling at you now, tugging from inside your ribs, like a fishhook made of memory. That night, you find the watch. You dug it from the grave when no one was looking, not to steal, just to understand. It's cracked. The hands have stopped at 3:17. The band is frayed, scorched in one place. You trace it with your thumb. And then, like it's nothing at all, you remember something. The last thing you did before ending up here. You were walking. It was dusk. A forest path. Narrow, cold. You'd stepped off the trail to check your phone. There was a flash, a high-pitched sound, like a whistle underwater. And then, Pierre, your memory hits you like a stone. Alice finds you sitting in the dark, holding the watch like it's sacred. I remember, you whisper. She crouches down. Remember what? Oh, I got here. And I think I can go back. She's quiet for a long time. Finally, do you want to? You look around, at the village, the chapel, the people gathered by firelight, the smell of stew and smoke and rosemary. You look at Alice. I don't know. She nods, like she knew that would be your answer. The priest calls for prayer. The stars burn colder than before. The door may be open. But your feet are still here. The next morning, everything is too quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet you get when the wind stills and the chickens take a break from screaming, no. This quiet feels like something holding its breath. Like the village has pulled the blankets up over its head and is waiting for something to pass. You wake in a tangle of wool, straw, and lingering doubt. The watch is still in your hand. You never let go of it, not even while you slept. You turn it over and over, as if doing so might reverse time like some medieval etch-a-sketch. Your host is already gone, Alice too. The fire is out, even the goat is missing. You step outside, blinking against the pale grey light. It's overcast. Again. And the air smells like wet clay and decision-making. The village feels thinner, fewer people out, fewer voices. The priest is nailing a fresh notice to the chapel door. You edge closer, pretending to study it like everyone else. One word stands out. Leave. The Baron's men are coming. Not for war, not yet, but to collect grain, labour, conscripts. The notice is clear. If you can't pay, you serve. Or worse, you go. Alice finds you by the edge of the field, arms crossed, jaw set. They're taking anyone who can carry a blade, she says. Anyone who can hold a line. You glance at her. You going? She snorts. They don't draft women. Not officially. Unofficially? I could cut off a braid and tell them I'm my cousin's ghost. He paused. You'd probably survive. Probably kill someone first. Here's your mainstream historical fact. Conscription in medieval England wasn't always organised. Lords and kings could demand levies from villages, often poor men forced into battle with pitchforks and borrowed swords. Training? Minimal. Life expectancy? Grimmer than the stew. Quirky Sometimes towns would buy out a conscript, send a drunk, a deck dodger, or even a travelling musician in their place. One legend tells of a goat dressed in armour being accepted as a replacement. No word on how it performed. Historians still argue whether peasant levies truly served any purpose, or were just disposable buffers for the real fighters, nobles and knights who didn't like to get blood on their silks. You watch the villagers packed. Not a lot, just bundles of cloth, half sacks of grain, one lucky man carrying a whole roasted duck like he won the lottery. Some are leaving ahead of the soldiers, some are staying out of stubbornness or fear, or because they simply have nowhere else to go. You find your host inside, sitting at the table. She's holding a rosary that's missing 3 beads. You should go, she says. You hesitate. Why? You've been leaving since the moment you arrived. It's not cruel, just true. You think about the watch again. 3:17. Maybe it's a clue. Maybe it's nothing. Then she adds, the forest path is clear today. And you know what she means. The path. The one you took without realizing. The one the other stranger must have followed. The The one that leads to somewhere else. Maybe home. Maybe not. Alice walks you halfway there. She doesn't talk, just walks. When you reach the edge of the trees, she stops. "You'll forget things," she says. "I already have." She reaches into her pocket and pulls out a strip of cloth, lavender dyed, faded, but still scented. She ties it around your wrist. "Well, you won't forget everything." You look at her. Really look. There's a weight in your chest that wasn't there before. Not homesickness, not fear. Something harder to name. Something shaped like leaving. "If I ever come back." She smiles. "You won't." Then she turns and walks away. You step into the trees. It's darker than you remember. The ground is soft. Leaves whisper. Something stirs ahead, just out of sight. The air feels thick, charged. You hold the watch tight. The sun slips behind the clouds. And then, you've stopped. Close your eyes. Listen. There's a hum. Low, distant, rising. It sounds like a train far away, or a dial tone, or a million people breathing in at once. And just like that, you're falling. Not through space. Through time. The air grows warmer. Feel your breath slow. The trees fade behind you, so does the village, the fire, the goat. Even Alice's voice, tucked somewhere near your heartbeat, softens into silence. You're floating now. No pain. No fear. The sky above you is velvet dark, sprinkled with stars older than any plague or war. You try to hold on to something, any thread of this strange, muddy world you've come to know. But even your fingers feel heavy now. Even the watch ticks more slowly. Then not at all. You're safe. The dirt is gone. The air is still. The silence no longer threatens. It welcomes. Breathe in. Feel the weight of your body melt into the warmth of memory. You are not lost. You are between. Between what was and what could be. Between sleep and wake. Between story and dream. You don't need to know where you'll wake up. You don't need to know what comes next. Because here, now, in this breathless stillness, you are free. Free of the scratching wool, the sour ale, the ache in your back, the smoke in your lungs. The door is shut. The stars are quiet. And you, dear traveller, are finally at peace. The story ends here. Close your eyes. Drift deep. Sweet dreams.